All right. So I think I finally have it figured out. Um, we are live, I think. I'm not sure. I don't have a lovely countdown that's happening here. Um, let's see. And choose my live mode, live video. Okay, I did that. Am I live now? Is anybody there? Okay, great. I see a person. So now let's see. Add, add. Yay! All right.
Yay!
Yeah. So thank you for being patient with us. So for everyone who is watching, we are starting a little bit late. Had technical difficulties. This is my first time doing Facebook Live, and so you couple that in with trying to add someone into the Facebook Live with you, and it just creates its own set of wonderful circumstances. But thank you for watching now with us or watching it in the replay. So I am Latoya. I am the owner of Tea Essence, and we are committed to creating ways and having conversations to help people live whole, well, and balanced lives naturally. And so, what does that mean? Really exploring the wealth of modalities and ways that exist for us to kind of exist in space and life and bring balance to ourselves and our families without having to try to go to chemical solutions for that. And so Chit Chat Friday is something that just kind of popped in my head. And so I'm very happy to have as our first guest for Chit Chat Friday, Stephanie Christian. I met Stephanie, I think it was a year ago, actually, um, around this time. Actually, yes,
Yes,
it was a year ago,
yes.
actually, around this time, while we were working in our Reiki group. So I studied Reiki from the same person that Stephanie studied, got her mastership training under. And so I am very happy to have her here. I did have a full bio for Stephanie that I was going to read, but in the confusion of laptop, phones, internet connections, it's on my phone, but I'm using my phone now for the Facebook Live. So I am just going to ask Stephanie to tell us a little bit about herself um, as a basic introduction.
Okay. You know, let's see, what background do we want to start with? Because there's so much to ourselves, right? Uh, you know, when I think about myself, I used to be known as the finance person, a person who did grants and contracts for most of my adult life. And about 10 years ago, I had a health challenge with something called endometriosis. And so that brought me to transition actually out of finance and into what I do now, which is mixing me being an endometriosis advocate along with a health and wellness advocate and Reiki. So, yeah, that's where we are today.
Great. So in the bio that you did send, I the phrase that you kind of talked about that you are a natural wellness advocate, and so for you, what does that idea of being a natural wellness advocate mean?
So I think it's something that I just gravitated naturally towards only because of where my wellness journey was leading me with my endometriosis, um, or with endometriosis, I should say. I don't want to still have it.
Yes,
That's a whole different.
powerful words, right?
Yes. So with endometriosis, and it just allowed me to see that, you know what, if I see beyond whatever situation I am in, if I see beyond the disease, if I see beyond the current situation, our mind, our thoughts are magnetic and they will allow us to get past our hurdles. So, in my journey over the last 10 to 12 years, I really want to share that with people, that they have it within themselves, that if they are looking for the knowledge that they need in their wellness journey, it's out there. And if I can be of help in guiding them and promoting that, in actually featuring benefits of different elements and different modalities that are out there, I absolutely want to do that.
I think what was really important is like when you started, how you first introduced it with my when I had endometriosis, and then you caught yourself and you was like, no, I'm not playing. And I do think that part of the whole wellness or things to natural wellness, one of those key tools I believe is kind of speaking life to power, right? So it's about what do we say, what do we allow our bodies to accept. Um, my kids when they get sick, or we'll use the conventional term when they're not at optimal health. You know, my youngest daughter, she still struggles with it. If somebody says, "Are you sick?" She's like, "Yes," and I'm like, "No, we don't say that." My oldest daughter has it. She'll be like, "I'm working on getting better," or "I'm getting better," or something like that. And so I think that mindset, because what we put in our body and what we tell our body responds to. So I think that, just how you caught yourself and was like, no, I don't want it to be mine, very, very powerful.
Yes, you know what it is? It's that you want to relate. You want to relate to people, that what they're going through and whatever it is that is at dis-ease in their body. However, it's like once you start to learn to process something or even how to shift your thoughts, you want to be in that positive mindset, as you just mentioned. And you do catch yourself. It's a learning process. You're constantly learning.
Yes. Erica, do you hear the people next door started cutting grass? Do you hear the person cutting the grass? There's a delay in the response here. So I'm going to keep
Oh, it's
going
okay.
until she says yeah or nay. Um, so do you mind talking a little bit with us about your journey through endometriosis?
Sure. So when I first found out and was diagnosed of having endometriosis, I was not in any of this journey with allowing myself to work on myself energetically. Let's put it that way. And I worked in finance, I worked long hours. And once I found out what the symptoms for endometriosis were, what causes those symptoms, stress was the highest one. It's the
Wow.
major one. However, it's like I couldn't wrap my brain around not listening to my doctor. And that was what was difficult for me to do at that time. It's like if you've been healthy and you've been well throughout your whole career to a certain point, and if nothing stops you in your tracks, nothing is going to make you reflect on what is actually going on in your life. And so this was a good reminder to myself, let's just put it that way, of understanding my body better, what was going on with my body. And it's something that was, my body was conflicting with probably since I was 11 or 12. And I just never knew how to express myself about it. I never knew who to talk to about it. Not that my mother wasn't available, it was just something that in our culture, it wasn't talked about openly. And because it wasn't talked about openly, there wasn't anything telling me that, hey, 14-day periods are not normal.
Wow.
And nobody was saying that, oh, cramps that are lasting you more than 2 to 4 days are not normal. Leg pain shouldn't happen with that. So it's like, and it's not even normal, right? Because even normal is then a judgment as well, which I'm learning. But it's what's not comfortable for our body. So when we actually look within and think that there is something that's not right, what can we do about it for ourselves? So, once I understood, well, first of all, let's just put it this way. It took me 2 years to get diagnosed with it. So it was a lot of going to the doctors and balancing work and family life at the same time. And that put me in a state where only my doctors knew what was going on with me internally. So I actually didn't even know how to internally check myself because I wasn't brought up to do so. My doctors knew how to internally check myself.
Right, right,
They knew by blood test. They knew because they were running the proper MRIs. They knew because they were doing the proper PET scans. And it wasn't until a lot later that one morning after my third surgery for endometriosis that I was praying, and faith was a part of my adjustment into the energetic work that I do. And I said, let it be your will to God. And it was like, well, if I'm going to say, let it be your will, then what is that will, right? Like, if this is the will, then I need to get through this, and I need to have faith that I'm going to get past this because God will allow me to do that. And it's not until a lot later that I started to understand that we ourselves are able to shift our mindset into being the mindset that we want it to be. So, whether if it was coming off of toxins altogether, any hormonal medicine, any medicine that was over the counter, that was like a mind process for me because all I knew to do was pop pills in order for me not to be in pain.
right, right.
So I mean, throughout the journey, I've had 5 surgeries, and then wrapping my brain around the science behind endometriosis, but then now being on the other side of the fence of actually looking at endometriosis, the symptoms, and the science behind what can actually combat or help um, with the solution there.
So, as an advocate, now, as you said, being on the other side of this, what are some of the things that you try to? You talked about culturally, how things just aren't talked about, or there are assumptions that we make, and even this value that we place on what's normal, right?
Yes.
So now that you are in this role or position as an advocate, what are some of the things that you like to kind of get people to start thinking about around endometriosis?
Okay, so the one thing is that I know that our talk was about balance, and one thing that allowed me to shift my perspective was cathartic writing. And with the cathartic writing came something called the wellness wheel. And this was introduced to me by a nurse practitioner who was doing biofeedbacks, because you have to understand that any surgery is trauma to the body. And whether we want to notice how we're processing that trauma or not processing that trauma, we need to understand where we are. And so, what the wellness wheel is if you could picture like a pizza pie or a pie and how it has equal 8 pieces, and it's a wheel. And so, you could have your spiritual self, you could have your physical self, your emotional well being, your occupational well being, your financial well being, your environmental well being, your social well being, and it could be prioritized in any way that you want. And what she had said to me is that you don't want any of these pieces to metastasize, because once that one piece, so even if it was my physical health when it comes to endometriosis, if that was metastasizing, it was taking over a large portion of my life where I was actually allowing for the endometriosis to take over my body rather than being somewhat in control of it to a point that I could control it. Same with like if you have a relationship or like a marriage, and I was allowing whatever issues there were. And again, it's like going back to focusing on the positive. So if you're going to focus on what's bringing you down and the negatives of each of these things, that's what's going to bring you down. But if you start focusing on, hey, I'm really happy to have endometriosis because it allows me to learn about myself and my body, and then that allows you to elevate yourself and give gratitude for what you're going through. I'm really happy to have endometriosis because it allows me to connect with a group of women to share this. So it's like allowing yourself to shift in those ways that you can't. Even when your relationship doesn't look great, you could also reflect on that in the opposite end. You know, it's so easy to just be like, oh, this is just not working out. I'm throwing in the towel and I'm walking out. But then to really just sit down and see what it is that we have as the foundation there. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, you talked about the wellness wheel, the cathartic writing. I think,
Yes.
I don't call it cathartic writing, but that's a good term. Just again, a vehicle or a way to get these things out. Because what we're trying to do essentially are give people tools, right? Tools
Yes.
that they are easily able to implement in their day to day life.
Tools is
You have to
that, oh, I think we're talking over each other. I don't know.
go
Okay,
ahead.
there we are. Okay. I was saying that
Oh, okay.
the thing with tools is that we got to naturally see what we gravitate towards. Sometimes what you gravitate towards naturally, I might not gravitate towards naturally. However, if it is an inclination that feels like, oh, hey, that might actually work for me, there's a plethora of tools. And also to do your research behind whatever it is that you're going to implement. So I spoke about cathartic writing. Cathartic writing is different, where I took each individual piece of my pie that was metastasizing at the time and gave it a notebook. And in that notebook, I put in what positively affected me in that realm. And every day at night, I would daily journal in just the positives, not focusing on the negatives. And if there were negatives that really needed attention, then I would write them in the back. And then reflect on them on a weekly basis or even a bi weekly basis, depending on how many things there were. And to really come up with the idea of now what? Like, how is this situation going to affect me 2 hours from now, 2 days from now, 2 years from now, 2 decades from now? And it's like allowing yourself to see that.
Yes. So I mentioned at the top of the live that how Stephanie and I met was actually in Reiki training, but we also both so we clicked instantly. And another thing that we both are passionate about are essential oils and how to use essential oils in kind of day to day life. And so we're both doTERRA advocates as well. In your process of um, dealing with and trying to heal through and work through the endometriosis, were there any essential oils that you found that particularly helped with either release or kind of being able to deal with the emotions and things that you were coming up with?
Yes, absolutely. So when I started with doTERRA, that was January of 2017. I was actually just finishing fully healing in like the medical terms after surgery, I would say, meaning that I was able to start a regimen of actually getting into exercising again. I was able to start work again. So it's like I had surgery in May, but there were like 19 areas of my body that were worked on through that surgery. So, you can imagine like just being in bed for quite some time, about 8 months, to just not be able to get up and move around and be yourself. I actually fell into a depression at the time, which is what might happen with some people and it might not. It just, again, it's the quality of your thoughts that allow you to know where you are. And for me, motivation or motivate, it's called the oil. I diffused that. I diffused vials and vials of that during the day. And what it just allowed me to do is feelings of really like taking charge and being empowered and being able to get through my day. Just a simple smell. And because we had spoken about balance, I took out my balance today. And, you know, this is a very, it's the grounding blend, and it's very calming. So it's dependent on what you're going through emotionally. And so, along with peace, I used peace in the evenings, and I diffused peace because I really wanted good sleep. I had actually turned to essential oils prior to that, using just peppermint to feel energized, lavender for good sleep, and frankincense for anti-inflammatory properties that the oil has. However, I was using a different brand. Not that brands matter. I think if you're using essential oils, if they are certified therapeutic grade oils, go ahead and you feel safe to use them, go ahead and do so. However, with doTERRA, I know that when it says supplement on the bottle, I'm able to take that internally if I would choose to. I'm also able to apply them topically, and they're safe, and I know that their purity and potency standards are met by third party lab testings, and I think that it goes through about eight of them, if not more. So that was my concern, like being able to use the oil safely. And then the other thing I learned with going to doTERRA was also having the benefits of the oils. A lot of the oils might be cold pressed, and therefore, I don't know, when I was a kid, I used to have a little lamp with a little tea light underneath where I used to burn oils. And what I learned is that if you actually burn oils, you're not getting the benefits that you normally would, because
Right.
you're kind of changing the chemical makeup of that oil by heating it up, just the way we would when we're cooking, and then, trans fats and all that happens. So Motivate was my depression oil, meaning that when I went through my depression, it allowed me to kind of shift out of that. Peace helped me go to sleep. It wasn't until later that I started to use cheer, and I was kind of allergic to passion in a way. So, meaning that passion has cinnamon in it, and during like Christmas time, if you're going through any of these craft shops, a lot of people have a lot of these cinnamon scents that are like fake cinnamon scents, or like in ways, in order for them to actually last longer, they put synthetics in them, and so therefore that gives me a headache. And so in the beginning, whenever I would smell passion, I would smell the cinnamon right off, and I'd be like, oh. But you know what it was? When I started to learn that I needed that passion in my life, it started to shift my mind, and the smell started to shift for me, believe it or not.
Well, no, actually, so there are a few things on that. I had a client who bought, what did she buy? The tea oil cleanse mist. And, she emailed me and said, hey, what's in this? Normally, she was like, there's a smell in here that I normally have a very bad reaction to, but for some reason, it's not bothering me and I actually like it. And I was like, well, I think it's a couple of things. I think what you mentioned about the synthetic oils and the fragrances. So sometimes people don't know that fragrance oil is not the same thing necessarily as an essential oil, right? Or you're buying an essential oil and it's not a good quality. Um, and so it's cut differently. And so the effects of it on your body, and you don't get all of the benefits from it because it's a different quality of an oil. But also, that they say, what's that saying, when the teacher is ready the student will come. Well, it's also kind of like that with, like how your taste buds change as you get older. I found that with some of the blends that I make, also, like when I'll make it, I'll be like, ooh, I don't like this smell. But it's because in that moment I didn't need what that particular oil was for. And then if later I pulled it up, one of the things specifically is I have one called Support. Later, if I would go and pick it up, like it is like it just does something to my spirit. And so what I've said to myself is kind of, okay, you didn't need it then, you need it now. So it's like that adaptability, you know.
Very true.
And in Tuesdays, Tip Tuesday, we talked about adaptogenic. essential oils, and I listed lavender as kind of one of my favorite adaptogenics because it really just, no matter, that one is like, put me in, coach. No matter what the situation is, it's like I'll help you. And so I love lavender and peppermint kind of for that same reason. So we talked about the wellness wheel. We talked about cathartic writing, um, um, diffusion of essential oils. Are there any other tools that you would like to offer um, our viewers? And then
Yeah,
you can tell them how they can reach you if you have any places you want them to follow you or anything like that.
absolutely. Another thing, I mentioned the wellness wheel. And so, it's like if any part of that pie is like kind of shifting, the wheel won't be balanced in order for it to, run along the road. In the same way, there is a wellness pyramid that doTERRA actually talks about. And in the wellness pyramid, it's about reducing our toxic load, getting ample amount of rest, getting good nutrition, getting exercise, so movement, what no matter what that looks like for you, because sometimes you won't be able to move, but however, you could do chair yoga, everything is out there. So it's about movement, about what your body allows you to do, along with nutrition. Nutrition is very important. And then finding a balance between informed healthcare, so going to your doctors, getting the appropriate tests done, and knowing that your body is in great shape, and then allowing for if it isn't, and you're put on certain medications that you can't avoid, that is fine too. It's just allowing yourself to find the natural alternative therapies, such as like Chinese herbal medicine, there's acupuncture, there's Ayurvedic, the Indian medicine, and then there's so many other medicines around. I mean, I know that when we go to the Caribbean, they always talk about bush medicine. So it's like, knowing what herbs actually are out there and looking up the herb itself and doing the research behind that herb and seeing how that makes you feel about what it may do or not do for your body. What else? Sound therapy was my gateway into my energy work that I do. And energy work is different. You could involve God in it as much as you want to or as less as you want to. And it's really a choice up to you. For me, when I do energy work and certain meditations, they are separate from my prayers to God. It's just the way I work. However, other people may not work that way, and they may need God to be there in their constant, everyday, everything, which I completely get to. And I recognize that and I say, you do what works best for you, what makes sense for you. Also, when it comes down to us doing Reiki, Reiki is a way where we get to balance chakras at the end of each session that we do. And for those of the people that may or may not know, chakras are 7 energy centers in our body, kind of like the meridians, if you want to look at it that way, in when we're getting acupuncture done. So if there is energy flow that is being blocked, it might surface as certain physical ailments. It may not. It may be emotional ailments. It's intuitively allowing yourself as the client on the table to know and trust your Reiki practitioner, and allowing for them to hold that space to bring in that love and light for you of wherever you may need it and whatever comes up intuitively. And there is that permission. There has to be the permission of the client that allows you to work on them, and you as a practitioner allowing yourself to just hold very neutral love, light at its highest vibrancy to come in for that client that's on the table.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. We have had a lot of technical challenges today, and I'm standing
It's
outside
okay.
in
I think
Florida.
Mercury
Uh,
might be in
but
retrograde.
I thank you again so much. Is there any place? I don't know if you have your endometriosis. Do you have a group? If anyone
I
wanted to talk.
do. I do have an endometriosis group. It's a public group right now for anyone that just wants to learn about endometriosis. Me and my endo sister Donna, we actually post a whole bunch of stuff, and it could be things about just what's going on with endometriosis now, or even things that we reflect upon that come about and that we're able to share publicly. There are plenty of groups that are private. However, in the private groups, I feel like there's miscommunication many times. And that's why we leave our group public so we are able to spread the awareness that endometriosis needs, because we don't have a known cause right now, no, nor a known cure. So the endometriosis group that I run is the Better You Beyond Endometriosis, and I'll probably post it in our comments later, just in case if people are looking for that. And then I also have another group called The Secret Life of Stephanie that you know, and that is more targeted towards essential oils, endometriosis, and Reiki all in one.
Well, thank you for joining us for our first Chit Chat Friday. Um,
Thank you
I
for
hope to
having me.
make this a recurring event. So I hope that on the replay, everyone is able to get something from it. We will post, as she mentioned, the names of her groups if you're interested in joining those. I will also put, if you're interested in any of the doTERRA oils that were talked about, a link for you to purchase some of those oils. And as you know, at Tea Essence, we create blends in roll-on sprays, body scrubs, and bath salts for you to kind of be able to take those things in. And it really is kind of finding this idea of finding these harmonious balances to help you achieve emotional healing or emotional wellness in your journey. So thank you all for joining us. Um, Drop a comment if you watch it in the replay. Share it. We appreciate that. If you have not joined the Facebook group, it's Tea Essence. Um, yep, it's Tea Essence. And we are on Instagram at Tea Essence _1. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Latoya.
You're welcome.
Much gratitude for you. Thank you.